Good evening and welcome to the 2025 Artist Fellowship presentations. My name is Teresa Booth Brown. I'm the Director of Community Programs here, Education. Thank you so much for being here in support of these amazing artists. So if you're not familiar with the program, we choose every year with a community jury 6 artists, and they work very closely. I'm really very fortunate and privileged that I get to work with these artists over these many years. We've been doing the program since 2018. So as of this cycle, 32 artists have been through the program, which is very exciting. So at this moment, I'd like to take a little special observation of artists who have been a fellow in the past. If you would please stand up, because we have quite a few in the audience. Yay! Yay! Amazing. So tonight we're going to see some different kinds of talks. I'm sure we've all seen all kinds of different artist talks, but one of the things that we really task these artists with is to think about their work in a little bit of a different way and to determine what a new or different way of sharing their work might be through a talk. So this is not highly polished. It's experimental. Who knows what's going to happen? We'll see. It's always a little bit of an adventure. But just keep that in mind when you're taking a look. It's really a talk that the Artist Fellows have developed really for you, but also for themselves to understand their practice in a deeper way. So with that, I will introduce our first artist, Betsy Elwin. Betsy is a mid-career sculptor and ceramic artist living in Snowmass Village. Recent exhibitions include Botanica at Gallery Lucinda in Red Brick, New Jersey, and in 2024, Contemporary Clay and the Grand Junction Art Center. She is represented by Rubine, am I saying that right? Rubine Red Gallery in Palm Springs, and is the Artistic Director of Ceramics and Expanded Media at Anderson Ranch Art Center.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank the Aspen Art Museum for supporting this fellowship. It's been a really great way for me to connect with local artists. I want to thank all of you for coming. The title of my talk tonight is, What Have I Done? And I like this question because it can be read 2 ways. It can be read as an answer, maybe, or a response to your question to me, Betsy, what have you done? I can say, what have I done? Or it could be a revelation in the studio or just a general disillusionment. What have I done? And I'm sure that's a question that all artists, even if they're wildly successful, have asked themselves, because they say, how am I going to retire? Why did I start doing this? What have I done? This is a companion piece to What's My Problem, which was a lecture I gave to teens here at the Aspen Art Museum. So I'll start way back, and I like to talk a little bit about my inspirations. And this current body of work that I've been doing for about 15 years was inspired by a mushroom. And it seems a little outlandish, but I'll explain why. I found this mushroom, and I thought to myself, I can't make anything like this. So it formed, I don't know how long, 100 million years or something. It developed, and then it sprouted, and then I just happened to find it at the right time, at the right moment. And here it is, and it's beautifully formed. And it's amazing, and it's also ephemeral, and I can't make anything like this. And so it kind of wrecked me for a little bit. It kind of stopped me in my tracks. I went back to the studio, and I proceeded to, I thought, well, I have material knowledge. I don't have 100,000 years, but I do have access to some pretty cool stuff. So I did go back to my studio, and I did try to make it. And it was a terrible failure. Well, not so terrible, but kind of. It broke immediately when I took it out of the kiln. It was basically lace that I dipped in slip, and I formed, and I fired. And it was beautiful when it was green, and then I fired it and it kind of flopped and slumped. But there was a lot of things about it that I really enjoyed, and I took away, from a failure. Everybody here knows failure is something that isn't always enjoyable, but it's something we try to learn from. So I took what I could from that, and I decided, mushrooms really aren't my form. I mean, not right now. But what's a form that I can try to use to convey what I'm trying to convey, which is two things coming together: beauty and fallibility, vulnerability and resilience, strength and fragility. So I decided to go quite literally to tools, the hand tools, and combine them with this fragile ceramic form. So what I'm hoping is that people would come to these and imagine them being used, maybe imagine them being broken, which was interesting to me, that they can embody these kind of implied actions or just this ideas of two things coming together. And being an overachiever, I want to make some bigger work right away. So this is hand-built and slip cast. And the way that I approached this in the beginning of this learning process was that I would slip cast the object, like this anvil, and then I would take lace, cotton lace, dip it in slip, and I would drape it over that slip cast form and carefully match the lace and adhere it. And then I would carve out the details, and then fire it. And it was amazingly beautiful, but one of the issues I had was I would run out of lace. So I was living in New York at the time, and I would go to Mood and buy their cotton lace, and it didn't matter what color it was, which rose the suspicion of the guy who worked there, who was like, why are you buying like all these ugly colors? I'm like, because they're on sale, and I don't care about the color. He's like, what are you making? So I was not making fashion, not really. So I was going through a lot of lace. And so I had to try to figure out how to solve that problem. This is me doing this process of making this form. And I also thought, I also have to expand my forms. So I expanded into architecture because I thought architecture is also another thing that we take for granted, that is, it sort of embodies who we are. And we sort of think of it as being something that's going to last forever, but of course it isn't. There's a lot about it that we live with that we don't really, that we take for granted. It was also a way for me to expand my scale of my work. So making a mold and filling it with slip is incredibly heavy. It can get to hundreds of pounds very quickly. So it limits the size of the objects I can make. So I decided to combine it with other materials such as rebar. And then I could make these sort of installations that were a little bit more physically engaging. And I liked rebar because it's one of those unsung heroes of architecture or infrastructure. It's a hidden material that we don't normally see, and I like the way that it can become a line in a composition. But I did figure out that I could make a cast of the lace. So I could make a slab mold. This is the model for my slab mold, reinforced with rebar, because it was actually doing what it's supposed to do, rebar in this case. And then I was able to turn out these textured slabs. And so that changed the way that I could work a little bit. I still had to make, for simpler forms, it worked very well. For more complex forms, I still made molds and forms with lace, and they were one-offs. But expanded what I could do and made my installations come about a lot faster. And also I didn't run out of lace, so I could keep using those patterns, and I have a catalog of commercial lace now. I like combining the ceramic forms with wood and metal and other materials. I like those materials to interact in a formal way, but also to enhance the precarity of the ceramic, so it heightens their vulnerability. I also like to play with, I don't know if you notice, this is flocked. So the metal rebar texture takes on this identity as sort of a velvet cord. Sometime in the middle of the night, one night, I had this idea that I could cast my arm. And I thought this would be fun because I haven't really explored the body, and it dawned on me that all of the things that I was using up to that point, whether it was tools or architecture, really were kind of a metaphor for the body. And I thought, oh, would it be bad if I went right literally to the body? Would that make a difference? And I'm a person who gets bored with making the same forms over and over again. So that's something that, and no judgment, a lot of artists do that. They have a form and they work through it their entire career. And, I could have done that with an anvil or a hammer, just kept going. But I like to do something else and then come back to those forms and see how they change. And so I experimented with this. This is sort of a self-portrait. And then I started doing a few more investigations into the body, some little, small, fun things that were a little bit more time manageable. This is a slip cast right when it comes out of the mold. This is it when it's done. And one of the most ambitious works that I did was this bust of a cast, a friend. It took me 5 times to cast this. And I took this picture because I said, I don't know if this is going to be the 5th failure. So I took a picture of it green, just in case, before I put it in the kiln. But it turned out. I don't put structures inside. It's really important for me to have the interior completely open. So that's another technical challenge that I have. I have recently started to put structures in, and then when things are leather hard, I carefully do surgery and pull them out, because I just don't want them in there. This is a tall sledgehammer. And this is the most recent piece I did before I came and moved here. This is a wrecking ball of stoneware. This is an exhibit I had before in Minneapolis. And now recently I've been working on making my own lace patterns. So one of the next steps for me is to explore making my own motifs, because there's the limit of commercial lace is that I have to work with the form or the motifs the way they are. The scale of it is always the same. And so this is going to allow me to expand that. So I'm currently working on that. Getting it manufactured is a little harder. But then I was able to go to China. So that's my leap into a residency. I've always wanted to go to China. And residencies are great because you get inspired by other things. And so immediately people were telling me I was going to be challenged by the clay. Every American artist that I ran into who'd been to Jindazhen said, you're going to struggle with this clay. It's going to be really hard to use. And, it's going to flop all over the place. Oh, but you're a slip caster, so it won't be that hard. But then I went to the museum. I was really thinking about this. And I went to the museum the first day I got there, and I was inspired by the carving tradition in China. It turns out they carve bone dry. And I started to realize that, a billion people can't be wrong. You don't go to China and the Chinese artists don't say, wow, our clay here is really hard to work with. They just work with it the way that they do. So really trying to get the clay to do what you want. I mean, nobody does that. Everybody picks their clay for what they want it to do. So I was able to go to a manufactory where there are actual workers hand carving, which is astounding because you think that it's all done by a machine, but it's done by hand. And I was able to watch how they did this. And I took that back to my studio in Jindazhen. And I started doing my own carving. I didn't carve bone dry because I just was too afraid of that, but I did carve when they were leather hard. And I started working on some new works in China, doing some relief carving with my new patterns. So these are examples of my new pattern. This is my cohort. This was New Year's. So it was really lovely to meet everybody and see everybody's new work. So I came back to Anderson Ranch and I started working in my studio, and I decided, where am I going to go from here? I can keep doing the same thing or I can try something new. And I started extruding these forms and then beating them out into other shapes and making new work. And I've kind of come back to working or rethinking abstract forms. So I'm kind of back at that mushroom stage, but it's not a mushroom, but it's different. Now that's what I did before my last meeting with the cohort here. And then I went to China and I just got back. This is Jindajian, this is my running path. It's incredibly inspiring, everything there is large. This is the fair that I was a part of, so I was invited to go to an international art fair and exhibition. Some people who purchased my work at the fair were excited and they sent me pictures of my work in their home, which was also very inspiring. And we went to Longchuan, which is the Celadon capital. We went to the Celadon Museum, which looks like a spaceship. And I saw this work from the Ming Dynasty, and it is carved through and through with this. And I was very inspired, and I was like, okay, this looks great. I love this big drum. And I had to give a lecture, and I had to present this lecture. I had about an hour to put it together before I gave my lecture on my work. They just said, we're going to do an international lecture. Can you put something together? And I did. But I met a lot of people, a lot of artists from all over the world. It was really an amazing trip. And I totally recommend doing the residency or going there at some point. It's really beautiful. And there's a lot of thoughts about China and the turmoil that we're in and all of this trade war and stuff. It was a lovely trip. Everybody was really very excited to talk to us, very excited to see our work, and they were really great hosts. So we all had a really lovely time. And so that was my trip, and that's my time.
Thank you, Betsy. Next up, we have Christy. Christy Helm is an artist originally from Texas with ties to Dallas, Chicago, Sao Paulo, Brazil, Sedona, and Aspen. Her mixed media paintings invite viewers to transcend the physical to a spiritual understanding.
Hi guys, thank you so much. I also want to thank the museum very much for this program that's been amazing, great experience, and thank you to Teresa for being an awesome mentor who leads with love and grace, and for my cohort who has just given so much too. I've loved working with you guys. I have a special guest with me tonight who's Terrence Dumpy, is a pianist and composer and jazz musician. He completed his undergraduate degree from Eastman College of Music, and he's Chicago-based. He spent most of his post-grad career teaching and performing, but he has performed in Colorado before when he toured with the Glenn Miller Orchestra, and he's currently in graduate school at the Frost School of Music in Miami. So I'm Christy, and kind of the whole point, I'm a painter, of my work is to help you, the viewer, to get into a meditative space. So I want to invite you. I have a little envelope in the chair that is a nod to my Southern roots. If you'll kind of close your eyes and just take a deep breath before we start, that would be great. Okay, you can open your eyes.
Thank you, Christy. Next up, we have Nicholas Ward. Uh, Nick is an artist living in Glenwood Springs. He explores storytelling, history, and the fragility of memory in his work. Here he is.
Hello. Thank you. Tonight, I want to talk about my creativity in relation to a number of changes that I've made to my artistic practice in the last number of months. First and foremost, I stopped accepting commission work last fall, which was a really hard decision. It was loaded with more than just that. And commission work provided a lot of financial stability for me in a career that so often just has so much unpredictability baked into it. And it allowed me to make it my full-time career for a number of years, which was amazing. And it facilitated deep conversations about my work and pushed me to sharpen some of my technical skills. But there are also a lot of challenges to accepting so much commission work. Sorry, these are just kind of going in the background. The way that I had structured the commissions began to feel sort of creatively stifling and more rigid than I find I have work the best in. And for example, I brought a few of my pieces that are still works in progress, but I found that I work best when I'm reacting to the visual input that I'm creating. You know, like when you start from a sketch and you blow it up to, you know, that's this big and you blow it up to this size, it changes a lot with the piece. Both just the sheer scale of it just changes the narrative in some ways, and some things that you think look great on this small scale, it's just very different. And so I found that like reacting to the piece as I'm creating them has been where I create the best work. Like for example, on this piece, these figures here, they weren't always so melded together. But once I got it to the scale, I decided that it felt too busy, and I had to dull it, not dull it down. That's the wrong. I had to simplify it, in a way that made it more comprehensible. And there's also a lot of other questions that I was asking myself as I was painting this work. Whether or not to include shoes on these figures. And it seems like a silly, simple thing, but when I started to think about it, it has a lot of implication, both narratively and substantively, as well as just visually. And so when I found that I was working on these commission works, the piece was rigid in a way that, like, the way I structured it, I had agreed with the patron, this is how it's going to look when I finish. And so making those edits on the fly just wasn't something I felt like I could do to honor this agreement that we had. So in addition to that, I also realized that in the last number of months, I hadn't created anything just for myself. And I didn't feel like I could present some of the more bizarre sketches that I had been toying with in the background, because on one hand I wasn't sure that I could pull them off, and so presenting them into the space where it's already sold just didn't feel comfortable to me. And some of these ideas, like I don't know, the motion and that's happening here, and I'm also exploring like fractured memory in all of that. And I just wasn't certain that I could pull that off. And I needed that space to create something that was just mine. And so I made the decision to step away from commission work, which, as I said, it was more complicated than just that. It had a lot of other implications. I thought I had to reframe this idea of being this quote-unquote full-time artist, which it was something that I dreamed about for the longest time, and sought after, and it was really amazing. And like I put so much value on setting my own schedule and working for myself, and so that felt like a challenge. And in some ways, I couldn't get away from this idea that I was almost taking a step in the wrong direction of stepping away from painting every day. And so anyways, through that, I had to pick up a part-time job. And Teresa shared a bit of advice with our group that really helped me reframe it in a very positive way. That that the idea was that you're not just the artist in the studio, you're living as the artist, and you're going to your part-time job as the artist, and you're going to the grocery store as the artist. And that, I think, led to me, well, for one, it was just, it felt so refreshing to reframe it in that way. And it also, I think, led to me becoming, in some ways, an even more complete artist, where I had to sort of wrestle with these ideas of what the implications are of living as the artist outside the studio. And I think I'm still exploring what that means. But anyways, this part-time job also provided enough income that I could afford to pay rent on a studio that was outside of my house, which is something that I had been working in my, 4 paces from my bed for as long as I can remember. And, as I'm sure some of you who might work from home here can relate to, it's incredibly convenient working from home, but it's definitely isolating and maybe not the most distraction-free space. When you're working, and your pile of laundry is within eye shot, my obsessive self couldn't help but fold it before I was able to really focus on my work. And this studio space really provided that focus. And it's also just the perfect short walking commute from my home. So that forcing me to get outside of my house and into fresh air, and it sets me in this mental space that really feels I can go into the studio space with more intention and treat my time and my work and that space as something almost a little more sacred, which has been amazing for both my work and just what I'm able to get done within that space. And where am I? Sorry. Anyways, this fellowship also couldn't have come at a better time. The whole group has been incredibly supportive in helping me wrestle with some of these thoughts and transitions, and really encouraging me to chase some of those weirder ideas, and also reflect and reframe the whys and the what's the point of my work as I head into this new space. And there was a bit of advice that William shared with the group that has really stuck with me, and it was something along the lines of take the weird thing and push it all the way to the limit, because it's easier to step back from that point than to try and inch forward from a spot that's too safe. And that's something that I've really been returning to when I'm questioning something in my work. So seriously, thank you for that. Yeah, this group has pushed me to grow and examine my work in a special way as I make all these changes. So, yeah, thank you for pushing me and encouraging me. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Next up, we have JJ. And JJ has traveled from the far reaches of the universe, and sculpture is his form of communication.
Hi, JJ. Thank you to Teresa, who has kind of guided us through this 9 months of the year, and the cohorts. I've learned so much, and it's been so nice to talk with the conversations and the sort of political talking that we do. And Teresa, thanks for keeping us on task and pushing us. We're working on it. So I'm trying something new. Usually I do a normal lecture, but I've made a complete video this time. And when I come from the universe, I carry stuff with me, and as I get more dialed in and more going into the woods of Colorado, I gotta use this. Thank you. Thank you. So I've been taking my studio outside and going into the woods and making work. And I've built some things that I carry with me constantly. So I have some of that on my staff. I carry my eyeball. So when I come from the universe, that's me coming in slowly. I've landed here. This is my ship. This is made out of bronze. This is a detail. I carry with me my nutrition cup. That's all I need. It contains my water and my nutrition. I carry many things in my pockets. Those are items I carry with me that create memory and traces of the past. This is my globe ring that is new, that is on my staff. This guides me through the universe and helps me decide where I'm at. I also carry a knife with me. This is the knife shop where the knife was made. Knife there on the left. This is my capture device. This is porcelain, lead, aluminum. This is a floating head made out of ceramic. I work a lot in the woods. Sometimes you come by animals. Sometimes you come by rocks that create pattern. And then a shell is formed and the clay is pushed in. There's the back of that object, the side of that object. This is what I call the ceramic history monster. It's nice to know our history and how ceramics work. It sits on a wooden base, but the ceramic history monster is made out of an old basket that was burned in the fire. The basket was lined with clay. The clay somehow got vitrified and turned into ceramic history monster. Always listening for the future, more like the cookie monster than a mean monster. And then I get to a New York piece that came from going to the bodega and getting coffee and seeing this horrible front page news. So I had to do something with this. And I made a still life, and I thought about these people from outside of our world, just looking at how bad we are as humans sometimes, and how when we do something, we think about it in a way that we grabbed a rope, we grabbed a camera, and we documented what we did, which is horrific. Same with this, we have what's called shield news here. We have somebody doing the protecting and people getting the news through a different form. Shielded from what's really going on. This is one of my animations. It's recent in the times we're in. And this is from an action I did at the Chicago Art Fair a few years ago. It was sort of rogue. I went into the center of the museum and laid out my station. Again, I carry with me some of the same things. An eyeball as a guide, a knife, a cup. It's nice to do things that are sort of out of my comfort zone, as we do as artists.
Thank you, JJ. Next up we have Laura Dortmans. Laura is a ceramic artist originally from the southeastern coast of Australia. She completed her MFA in ceramics at the State University of New York at New Paltz in 2024 and is now the artistic programs manager at Anderson Ranch Art Center. Laura was the recipient of the 2023 Emerging Australian Artist Prize from the Australian Consulate General in New York and the American Australian Association Arts Scholarship. Most recently, Laura presented a solo exhibition at CMC Aspen and is preparing for her upcoming exhibition at Carbondale Arts in October. Laura and I are going to do a little conversation. So, to start with, let's set a little context for the audience of your past year being 1 year out from graduating from your MFA program. So what does that look like?
This fellowship came at a really perfect time. I think we first got together in October, and I'd been maybe 5 months out of grad school then. And people had said to me that leaving grad school in that first year is a little bit strange, and I had this period of 2 years of really intensely making, and even the 2 years leading up to graduate school were quite intense. Obviously, we were during COVID, and I was at home, and this is a kiln that I built with my dad during COVID, and I was making heaps of work and doing lots of projects, and launched from there into grad school. And then last May, suddenly, it was just like the brakes were on, and for the first time, I didn't have a studio, I didn't have a project, I didn't have exhibitions. I had to kind of take some time to think about what was next. So the fellowship has come at a really great time to reconnect with that and really think about my work and about what I want to do with it.
Nice. So maybe that's a lead into just speaking about the materiality of your work, your process. Tell us what that's all about. And just by the way, Laura does have a piece, which is over by the elevator, so make sure you get a chance to go take an up-close look at it. So just talk to us about what we're looking at there.
Yeah, I think that language around materiality was something that, through graduate school, trying to find a language for what I was doing, I was working with these kind of strange sculptural forms, and I didn't really have a purpose for them. I didn't really know what they were doing. And so through that time of understanding that actually what my curiosity is with the materiality itself and with the process. And as you can see here, I'm a little bit obsessed with testing and glazing and clay and surfaces. And at one point, one of my professors told me I had to stop experimenting, and I actually had to make something, because I could just keep going for years just doing this stuff. So I'm so excited by what could possibly happen, and what if I try this, and what if I break these rules. And coming from maybe 15 years of working with clay in a very rule-oriented way of this is how you do ceramics and these are the rules of ceramics, and then having the freedom to really play with those materials and break some of those rules that I had become so accustomed to. There's a lot of freedom in that. So I've found that my engagement with the material and understanding what that feels like for me, and I think accepting that that's a legitimate purpose in itself, and being in love with a material and a process and following that and seeing where it goes, that's really exciting to me, and that's where I'm at with my work now, and I think I'll continue following that.
Absolutely. I also want to mention that I know several of the artists have mentioned that we had the artists come in, all the artist fellows come in and speak to our teens, our dynamic arts programs, and they did a little mini talk for the teens, and Laura brought these pieces, and the the kids, while they were listening to the talks and everybody was giving their presentations, made the most amazing arrangements of these tiles. It was really wonderful. So that's the what. How about the why? What is your philosophy around the why for your work?
Yeah, that's something that we've spoken about a lot over the last 6 months, and something that I was really developing through graduate school was this question of why do I make, and this idea of a philosophy of making. And it's something that I've carried with me, that I take into my teaching, and that I think is this evolving thing that I will continually keep re-examining is why do we make, and how do I make? I think they're the two components of this idea of a philosophy of making. And I think that why is something really fundamental, that I tried for the longest time not to be an artist. And I did printmaking in my undergrad, and through that time, as a 20-year-old was saying, oh, well, I'm doing this visual arts major, but I'm never going to be an artist. I'll go and I was a teacher for the first 10 years of my career, and it felt like the right thing to do, like the sensible, responsible thing to do. And, I had this this sense, this intuition of, this isn't something that I can escape. Like, this is something that is fundamental to who I am. And I believe it's something that's really fundamental to how we live and, how we are as a society and humanity, that making and creativity and art is so fundamental to who we are and how we understand ourselves and our place in the world. So I guess that's the big picture, why. And then the how is really this journey within that of giving myself permission to experiment endlessly. And I mean, I can't tell you how little I think about a product. I do not think about what something is going to become. I just make one decision after the other. I kind of live the same way as well, just, one foot in front of the other. And actually that was before I left Australia. My Oma, who's nearly 100, said to me, you just put one foot in front of the other and you keep going. And I think about that a lot in the way that I make, and using that as a way to move through this work and explore and discover.
I'm glad that you took another look at that and didn't abandon your practice. You and I have had some really incredible conversations, ones that I have deeply, deeply enjoyed, about purpose. And I think you really introduced to me the idea of thinking about your practice and what was your purpose as an artist. That's really intrigued me ever since we had our great conversation. And can you speak about your own purpose and how you think about that?
Yeah, it's such a big question for me, and I don't think this question of purpose, I don't think it's anything that has one answer or an easy answer or an answer that will stay the same. It's something that will continue evolving, and something that I really like to re-examine is, why am I doing this and what's really driving me? I think it's something that's really fundamental to motivation, that understanding the why that drives what I do. And for me, it's listening to this need, that I do this because I need to do this. And the purpose of that is that I get to live this life where I get to discover great things. And discovery for me is the purpose. It's at the core of what I do, and the excitement of, I can try 99 things that don't work, but that one time in 100 that I discover something really great, that's the purpose. And I have to stick through all the failure. But for me, the excitement and the meaning of it all is that promise that at some point, after everything else sucks, I'll find one thing that's really great, and that's what drives me to keep making.
Amazing. So another part of our conversation that has really stuck with me is, you and I have had lots of conversations about leadership in the arts, education and teaching and the arts organization, since we both work for an arts organization. So we've had some good talks about that. But I'm wondering if you can share a little bit about that with us. Like, what does that mean? How do you share that? And how does that fit into the rest of your practice?
Yeah, it's something I've really enjoyed discussing with you. And, one of the reasons I wanted to have this conversation is that it's one of the things that I've got out of this fellowship is I so treasure the conversations that we've been able to have, and the connection that we've had talking about these bigger ideas. My background, before being at graduate school, I was in education leadership, and I did my master's in education leadership a long time ago. And so I'm really curious about that as something that drives the way that we are in the world and the way that we are in our organisations. I also think about leadership as something that we all possess. Like, we're all leaders in some element in our lives, and the way that we lead, the way that we take responsibility for things and step up in the world is a form of leadership that we all have. And connecting back to the last question, I think it's about purpose. That, great leadership comes from a really solid purpose and from really solid values. And they can be the values of the organisation, the values of an individual, the values of a team. But when I've seen, I've been really fortunate to work with some really wonderful leaders, and I think they're people who are very values-driven, very purpose-driven, and mostly I think they understand that great leadership is never about the leader, that leadership is not about me. Leadership is about our purpose and where we're going together. And I don't know how that fits as far as, me being an artist or me being where I am, but just something that I'm really curious about and something that we've spoken about at length. And I'm so excited to read what you're coming up with. I know your research in that area is moving forward as well. So something that I've really enjoyed discussing, and I hope we'll continue that conversation.
It's really more of I think, thinking about what the artist's life looks like in its biggest form, what the potential is, and where does teaching or leadership or any of these things, how do these fit together? So one last question in closing. What's next? Do you have some unfinished projects you're thinking about? Are you headed into the great unknown of being an artist? What's next? When you walk into the studio next, what's your strategy?
Definitely the great unknown, always the great unknown. I think that's always what I'm looking for, is not knowing. It used to terrify me not knowing what I was doing, and I wanted a career that I knew was going to be this, and I wanted to be, I never thought I'd leave Australia. Like, I thought I would be staying there and working there, and the potential of the unknown I find really exciting, and that's really what this work is. It's all just the product of the unknown. I've been working on some new work that follows this process, trying to explore a new colour palette, trying to step into some more wild surface work. I've made a piece that I think may become a tabletop. It's made in this form, but it's got these flat surfaces, and so I'm thinking if there's space to maybe step into some more furniture-focused work. I don't really know. I'm still playing and enjoying the materials that I've got and the challenges that I've got, and I'll see what work comes out next.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Okay, for our final presentation this evening, it's William Lanzillo is our final artist tonight. William creates sculptures, performances, and interactive installations. He received a BA from Carleton College in 2019, studying both psychology and studio art. And then he earned an MFA in sculpture from Cranbrook Academy of the Arts in 2023. He currently works as a sculpture studio coordinator at Anderson Ranch Art Center in Snowmass Village. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. Thanks to Teresa and the museum and our cohort. It's been really fun talking about work with everybody. I'm going to start off with a video.
Me in preparation, all I know is when, feel like Gary Payton. It's that process, it's that in the making, it's that started from the bottom, it's that motivation.
what if free waffles flew out of trees on zip lines? While the absurdity of the scenario lies on the surface, underneath this layer, I take a genuine interest in the implications of this reality. How would the systems at play that normally regulate and control experience be changed if such an occurrence was common? An apparently serendipitous or unexpected moment of joy is created. A brief fissure cracks open in what we expect or know to be true. How could this brief and precarious moment cascade into something else? It could be a monumental moment of questioning how the world works, or a moment of levity that could create an opening to connect with someone. Tonight I'm hoping to convey some of my approaches and how I think about the work that I make. And this slideshow is mainly a collection of documentation with some reference images and also some text that I've written in response to my work sprinkled throughout. And the collection of images is intentionally overwhelming and mixes together both interactive and performative work and also some more formal sculpture. And I think that the art making process plays a role of questioning in my life. And this is the broad connector between all the work I will show you. And while I'd love to talk about each project in depth, I'm hoping that this approach will be more impactful. Oops. I would like to start with a quote from Leslie Dick, who is an artist and writer. And she writes, "I am intrigued by the presumption that all worthwhile artworks are somehow engaged in a process of critiquing the dominant ideology and political formations of our time. Where's the criticality? Some people believe that's what validates an artwork or invalidates it. I think there are many ways to challenge received ideas and power structures, and sometimes refusing to engage directly can be a way of carving out space for something else. Sometimes the artwork steps outside of explicit criticality in order to do something else. I am convinced that there is no space outside of the systems and power structures of our world, so inevitably we speak a language that we participate in, even when our work proposes an elsewhere. In this context, the other thing the artwork may be doing will be temporary and precarious. And those qualities are precious and worth articulating. I was catching up with a friend. We had not talked in years. We were reminiscing about time spent together, and he mentioned that he always tells a story that I had told him. "You know the one about your dad?" he said. I did not know what I could have said, but he recounted the story I had forgotten. "You told me about how when you were little on Sundays before church, your dad would sometimes wake up early to make waffles. And when they were ready, he would yell, 'Who wants waffles?' And you and your 3 brothers would come running down the stairs." I've been thinking about these moments that you may not remember, but they had an impact on someone else, whether this be large or small. I have an interest in creating novelty. Novelty grabs our attention. It can hold our focus and direct our thoughts. Experiencing something new can be invigorating or offer a chance for a new perspective. I struggle with the idea that my work will perpetually be consumed into something already known. This friction, though, ideally produces the formation of elements capable of speaking twice, from their readability and from their unreadability. With this in mind, I have come to see participation and social engagement as important factors in communicating. My goals are not oriented towards novelty for novelty's sake, but rather to attempt to collapse the distance between art and life. Novelty creates openings for change and to see the world anew, and creating new connections to the people around me. An art experience, whether this be through encountering an object, performance, or participatory event, can have fuzzy edges and bleed into the everyday. invigorating our experience with newfound meaning. Life is moving through things, through places, through ideas, and with people. How to make sense of it all? I want to be connected to something bigger than myself. While I often focus on finding joy and connection, sometimes this process entails revealing something tragic, lonely, mournful, or devastating. My hope is that my work does not just exist as a representational stand-in for ideals and values, but allows space for them to begin to be enacted. I once wrote a paper in college for a class called Love and Friendship. The objective was to formulate your own theory of love, pulling from the authors we had read over the term. I finished my paper over the winter break, and I'm proud of what I had written, how I'd thought it all through. After sending it in, I rushed to my mom and grandmother who were chatting at the kitchen table. I sheepishly told them about my project and asked them to read it. I was both embarrassed, yet also had this anticipatory excitement that what I was sharing with them might somehow strike a chord. My grandmother barely reads it. She periodically picks up the conversation she was having with my mom, who reads over her shoulder. I'm frustrated that she doesn't seem to care. They both finish reading, and my mom says she is proud of me. My grandma looks at me warmly and says, "You must really care about you, don't you? You must really care about her, don't you?" Yes, is all I can say. My grandmother and mother return to their conversation. I slink away, convinced that I should have just kept it to myself. Art making is not just about creating knowable connections, nor is it about creating total chaos. An object or experience merges together multiple representations that talk to each other. The real-time processing of an experience as ideas flow on top of one another, and you begin to process each one after the other, can create a moment where new ideas and connections begin to emerge. They can make sense together or be completely, apparently unrelated. The experience of taking it all in can subtly reorient you, even if this reorientation is difficult to put into words. I am wary of positioning myself as more knowledgeable than my viewer. I think about taking images and representations at face value, and this often leads to the quickness you see in my work. I select materials that are understood for their usefulness to quickly make an idea come to life. I prioritize the use of materials before their representations or the symbols that they stand in for. This is a way to direct attention more towards an experience rather to intellectualizing some kind of meaning, which I often find can create distance between the viewer and the work. I let materials exist how they come to me, so that I might avoid illusion. It is not always about guiding to some grand point. It is about the experience itself. Take what is known and stretch it as far as you can, like a taffy pulled into the thinnest of threads. When I'm immersed in my work, I feel outside of myself sometimes. A moment of transcendence where I experience the world anew. The moments are created and crafted, but they also create themselves. Energy brought turns into energy received. Close together, compressed, rapidly accelerating toward your future. Time pulls you along, rushed from one thing to the next. Can you feel it? We are all right next to each other. So the last thing that I want to talk about is throughout this presentation, you've seen images of both these performative things and then also images of these more formal works. And I really do see them actually quite closely related. I like to think about structures of how things work in the world. And I feel like those formal metal sculptures are thinking about space and how space is structured and how you could capture space, how you could represent it both as a three-dimensional form, but also as this kind of flattening image. And then it also just feels like this moment to kind of question how we interact with spaces that we're in this very formal way. So you're just interacting with the metal and the material and the negative space. And then these other works, like I said at the beginning, they really feel like this questioning for me of kind of what would happen if this existed, or I engaged with people in this or that way. And yeah, so I think that there's a lot of different ideas that I'm interested in exploring, but I do think that this idea of using art as a way of questioning the world around me is like a key component of how I work and yeah, why it's important to me. I also think that the opportunity to work with other people and bring other people into an experience, even if they don't even know exactly what's happening, is also a really exciting space for me. And I think it's about like opening up people to a different experience, experiencing the world differently, hopefully, then approaching each other differently. Yeah. And there's definitely a maximalism in my work, which I think is kind of like trying to create this immersive environment for people. And yeah. Thank you all.
Thank you, William, and thank you, dear audience, for coming tonight. We hope you'll hang around for a little bit. We have some food and we have more wine. Please join us for a small celebration of these wonderful artists. Thank you.